What if I told you every single Rihanna era was already written in her birth chart before they even existed? Because when you actually connect her albums to her birth chart, you begin to see what patterns start to emerge. From the music of the sun to Anti, they all line up almost perfectly with key points in her chart. Music of the Sun is Rihanna's debut solo album. The sheer essence of this album really speaks to her 12th house Pisces Sun and 1st house Aries stellium. And the strategic success lends to her 10th house Capricorn stellium. A 12th house Pisces is ancestry and collective memory, so you get an album that shines a lot on Caribbean sounds and has soft and fluid vocals from her Pisces energy. During the release of this album, Saturn in Leo was trine her 1st house Jupiter in Aries. This represents an early industry blessing, but also a lot of control and structuring around her potential for stardom. Saturn was also squaring her 10th house Neptune. Now this is creative tension. It best reflects how with this album, her exact sound and branding decisions weren't fully aligned yet with her inner artistic truth. It also essentially shows how Saturn represents the industry wanting to manufacture a pop star. Uranus in Pisces was conjunct her sun, and this was incredible for the album as it represented the sudden change in direction of her life with her discovery into the music industry, and represents her being found and the unexpected global trajectory this album had. The aspect Uranus conjunct Sun can mean instability with identity, one that's constantly evolving, and that's exactly what we would see with every album to come. Her 1st house Aries stellium is the embodiment of bright, upbeat and dance-driven songs. Songs like If It's Loving That You Want best reflect her 1st house Aries Venus, as its youthful desire, directness with romantic expression and uncomplicated attraction. Her 10th house Capricorn stellium, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune, really captures all of the serious curation that went into this and her image. The 10th house rules career, public image, structure and long-term goals, so this looks like a clean commercial packaging of the album, a radio-ready production and a very strategic crossover into US mainstream pop. A Girl Like Me is her 2nd studio album. Her 11th house Aquarius Mercury is nicely activated here. Mercury rules the voice, lyrics, thinking and messaging. Aquarius is experimentation, rule breaking and futurism. And then the 11th house is mass audience, community and pop culture. So that's why with this album, we start seeing experimentation with her sound and identity more. And also around the time of this album, Saturn was still moving through Leo, adding pressure for her to mature from the innocent pop girl next door vibes. By this album, Rihanna was still being defined by the industry and basically testing which versions of her connects with audiences. Her identity shifts depending on what works for her commercially. However, her Aries stellium is working hard too at this point, as her personality starts to emerge a bit more. Songs like Unfaithful reflect her Aries Venus and her 8th house Scorpio Pluto, as it's all about pain, guilt, obsession and betrayal. And then SOS is her 9th house Sagittarius Mars' chaotic emotional urgency and overwhelm and the literal broadcasting of an intense reaction to love spiraling out of control. Good Girl Gone Bad is where we see a major turning point, full activation of her Aries stellium again, representing rebelling of her identity, stronger 8th house Scorpio influence as she undergoes sexual transformation, and then her 10th house stellium is nicely at work here as it helped usher in career reinvention that launched her to stardom. During this time, Saturn then went into the sign of Virgo, which means getting more precise and disciplined, as well as rebranding, which we see her go from a good girl to bad. Umbrella reflects her 10th house stellium as the song is about protection and support, which would be Saturn. The disruption and chaos this song caused would be Uranus, and then the sexual innuendos and myth-making, for example, devil worshipper and Illuminati rumours, would be Neptune. Rehab is her 12th house Sun in Pisces, emotional withdrawal and addiction, and then Don't Stop the Music is her 1st house Aries Jupiter, embodying freedom and movement. Rated R is Rihanna's 4th studio album and really reflects a lot of Pluto, Scorpio, 8th house and Mars energy. Her 8th house Scorpio Pluto is activated here as this album has a lot of themes around trauma, darkness, control and sexuality. We see Pluto activating a deep transformation through this album. That's why it takes on a more emotional dark tone and her identity is more intentional and controlled. Russian Roulette is quintessential Plutonian energy, as the song is about life and death and psychological control. Uranus transits at this time represent the sudden, unexpected turn this album took, but also all of the personal upheaval she was experiencing around the time of the album's creation and release. This album we see Rihanna's 12th house Pisces Sun take a step forward a bit more from her Aries domination. How this shows up in the album is we see more vulnerability, introspection, pain that's felt, and emotional numbness. Her Sagittarius Mars is direct, confrontational, and expressive. Even though the album is darker and more internal, there are moments where the emotion breaks through as sharp, direct, and almost aggressive honesty. This then shows up in the album through songs like Hard being assertive and defensive, Wait Your Turn being confrontational and commanding, and Rockstar is rebellious and unapologetic attitude. Loud is Rihanna's 5th album, and we see pleasure returning after darkness. Her Jupiter in Aries is a perfect placement that represents this album, especially as she was going through a Jupiter return at this time, meaning transit Jupiter was back in her natal sign of Aries. And Jupiter is expansion, amplification, success, and confidence. Aries is identity, boldness, and desire. And so simply, this transit for her was an expansion of self, confidence, and visibility. A Jupiter return makes you take up more space, become more magnetic, and lean into pleasure and joy more easily. And so after all the darkness and heaviness of Rated R, Loud brought back this brightness, colourful aesthetics, and high energy production. Uranus in Pisces transiting also meant her artistic reinvention continues. Songs like What's My Name embody her 11th house Aquarius Mercury's identity, social recognition, and viral cultural imprint. Only Girl in the World is again her Aries showing out, being unapologetic in desire and embodying self-centered love. Talk That Talk continues to follow the theme of her Aries dominance. During this era, we begin to see where her chart starts to express sexuality as power and communication. It's less playful flirtation like Loud, and more confident and verbally explicit desire. Her Aquarius Mercury and Aries Venus are activated in Talk That Talk. Her Mercury placement reflects all of the bold language, detachment, and sexual communication. Aquarius is unfiltered and pushes boundaries, and the 11th house, being the public, both show how she communicates lust and desire as things that can be said openly to a wide audience. So we see explicit language and her turning private affairs into public dialogue. We Found Love is her Neptune and Venus influence with its addictive love and illusion. And Where Have You Been connects to Mars as its physical pursuit of desire on a global stage. Now looking at Unapologetic, another album that cemented Rihanna as an icon. And yet again, we see her 10th house stellium at work here. And during this time, Pluto is still in Capricorn as it's a very long transit, and we've seen how it's influenced her career path thus far. But by this point, it's where she begins to start being a cultural figure as it sextiles her MC. She shifts from being an artist managed by the industry to an artist who's becoming the architect of their own sound. Pluto sextiling her MC means increasing her cultural influence, deepening audience attachment, and her turning controversy and vulnerability into authority. Rihanna's 12th house Pisces Sun is a beautiful symbolization of the lead song Diamonds. It's Pisces in the 12th house being spiritually transcendent, an inner light shining through darkness, and it generally speaks to the album's overall theme of emotional vulnerability. The raw defiance of this album, I think, connects to her Aries Moon and Venus as its raw emotional exposure, and then Pour It Up would be her 8th house Scorpio Pluto representing money, power, taboo, and sexuality. Anti is Rihanna's last album to date, and by this point, she stops participating in fame as a system and begins redefining what musical autonomy, visibility, and personal identity mean even more. By this time, her 12th house Pisces Sun becomes strongly activated, shifting her away from external performance and into withdrawal and introspection. This is also where her earlier Aries dominance is no longer performing outwardly in the same way. The result is a shift from being seen to controlling how and when she is seen. At the same time, Pluto in Capricorn is still active and continuing its long transformation of her public identity structure. By Anti, this is no longer just external career restructuring, as in Rated R or Unapologetic, but internalization of power. She no longer needs the traditional machinery of pop stardom to validate her existence. Pluto here represents deep control over legacy, narrative, and artistic ownership. This is why Anti feels like a refusal of expectation. It dismantles the idea that she must continue being predictable in a commercial sense. Instead, Pluto Capricorn energy matures into sovereignty. She decides what success looks like and when she releases music. Finally, her Sagittarius Mars and Aquarius Mercury become crucial in shaping how Anti communicates its themes. Her Sagittarius Mars here is no longer explosive outward aggression as in earlier eras. It becomes more principled and boundary setting. It expresses itself through distance and independence. Remember, this album came 4 years after the last one, the longest time she's ever taken between albums, and it would subsequently become her last album to date. Her Aquarius Mercury reinforces this by transforming her communication style into something more abstract and conceptual. Work is a great example, especially as it caused a lot of commotion with its use of Bajan Creole and Jamaican patois. And that's how Rihanna's entire career was written in her birth chart. Every era, every shift, every reinvention mapped out through her Pisces, Aries and Capricorn placements. If you enjoyed this breakdown, let me know who you want me to look at next. And don't forget to comment, like and subscribe for more deep dives into astrology and pop culture.